You're not the only one.
Hey folks, welcome to Underlord's Universe, where we talk about all kinds of stuff related to hard rock and heavy metal and sci-fi and horror and the stuff that inspires us to make our own goofy creations. And today, my brother and my creative partner, Brent, we have a special guest with us. We have the author of this book here, Ron Williams. This book, I Stole Your Love, the 100% true story of a 100% true KISS fan. I saw this on Amazon and didn't even think. It was like click. And I'm buying that. So thanks for visiting with us today. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, Brian and Brent, thank you very much for having me on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to check out the book. It's just, sort of from a fan to fans. So I love hearing that the people have read it, and really impressed with what you guys are doing here with Underlords of the Overworld. So
Thank you.
it's an honor to be here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and you're way over there on in British Columbia. You're in a suburb of Vancouver, correct?
Exactly. So we're about, oh man, I don't know. It takes about 40 minutes to drive to Vancouver. So we're not so far away, but we're definitely removed in a smaller town for sure.
Okay. And I did know, I've never been out that way, but Brent and I, we've been to Canada once. Ironically, since we're talking KISS here, the only time he and I have been to Canada was to Toronto to see Paul Stanley as Phantom, which was really cool.
Yeah.
I noticed though, there's a park in Vancouver called Stanley Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious, did you ever, as you were growing up, just refer to that as Paul Stanley Park? I mean, it just seems like you had to,
right? I never actually thought of that, right? Stanley Park is, you might call it our what's the big one in New York? I'm drawing a blank here.
Central Park.
Central Park. It's huge, right? And there's tons of buildings, things to do, and so forth. But I never really made the Paul Stanley connection. I don't know why, but now that it's in my head, right, it's going to be sticking there for a while.
Right. So like I'd said before we hit record, this is just going to be a discussion more so than an interview. When I read your book, I said to Brent, like, I want to talk to this guy. It was like, even though your story was unique to you, there were so many elements where I thought, oh, that reminds me of this. It reminds me of that, of our own, background. And because you're a teacher too, correct? English teacher?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. And
that's right.
So I'm a social studies teacher. And so as an English teacher, I'm curious how, was being an English teacher at all any way influential in your decision to write a book?
Well, it's pretty funny because before I started teaching English, for example, I never used the semicolon. And then at one time in my curriculum, I had to teach that. And then while I was reading this book, I'm constantly like, no, I can't use this many semicolons, right? Or like the ellipsis, right? I'm always using the 3 dots, and I'm like, no, I can't keep using these, right? And also with my classes, English 10, English 11, English 12, we have core vocab lists. And yeah, every time a core vocab word comes up, and I'm like, oh boy, is this what my life has come to,
That's awesome.
But I didn't really, it's funny because it really is just from a fan to fans. And at one point I thought to myself, what am I doing for paragraph structure? Like, do I have topic sentences? Am I properly supporting them? Do I have the correct transitions? So I've never really gone through and looked at that aspect of it, but I did wonder sometimes.
Well, it's such a fun read. I mean, it's such a smooth read. And I know Brent's chomping here to get in, but I just want to ask one more teacher related question. Do your students, are they like fully aware of your book and your KISS fandom, or do you kind of keep that separate a little bit?
When I first started teaching, I really, I was a young guy, and it was around the time that Psycho Circus was coming out. KISS was kind of reformed again.
Mm-hmm.
And I really embraced the KISS. Like I brought in things, put them up in my classroom, and the kids really caught on. They started listening to KISS. And then when the Psycho Circus concert came through, a number of them went. Now that I'm an old guy, I'm kind of, I do have one picture up in my classroom, just kind of sits in the corner that the odd student asks about. But I was on, fortunately, the local paper where I teach in Port Coquitlam did like a story on myself and the book. So, all my students kind of found out about it. And, a couple bought it and came to me to have it autographed, which was kind of funny. But it comes up sometimes, and the kids say, "Mr. Williams, like you wrote a book," and I say, "Yeah," and I'll grab it from my shelf because I have one at school, and I've never had a kid ask if he or she could take it home, though. They just gotta look for a minute, and then I just look over, and it's sitting at the desk. So,
Well,
there's a little overplay these days, but not as much.
yeah. Well, and like you say, we're older. I teach high school as well, and I think it is kind of interesting. It seems like 20 years ago, kids were really into kind of like whatever niche music was kind of their generation. But today it's so widespread. I mean, I get kids that know absolutely nothing about classic rock stuff, and then I have other kids that ask me like, "Oh, do you listen to Jethro Tull?" And it's like, where did you it's like it's so varied nowadays. And I think that's partly because of how music is distributed and digitally and all that stuff. It's just a whole new world. But yeah. So anyway, let's kind of dive into some of the KISS stuff.
Well, Ron, I was just my first question is, you decide you're going to write a book. What was there a compelling moment or a moment where you're like, this is the book I'm going to write? I'm going to write about my experience, my upbringing with KISS, my love of KISS music, or all things KISS. Because as I think about it myself, if I were going to write a book like this, it would be similar to this book, but I don't know that I would ever actually do it. So what was the impetus, if there was something to kind of, yeah, this is the book I want to write, and kind of how did you approach that and go about doing that?
Yeah, thanks, Brent. Great question. You guys kind of said the magic word earlier, COVID. Yeah, I'd always wanted to write like a novel, like a fictional novel. And a few years ago for Christmas, I received a book called something like, How to Write a Novel in 30 Days. So when COVID came, I said, well, this is the perfect opportunity. So I sat down and I didn't read the whole book, but I sort of followed the outline, and I was going to write a novel in 60 days was my plan, so I could write a little less each day. As I started doing that, I sort of recalled another project that I had started years earlier, and I had started writing about KISS, and just some of my experiences with KISS. I began that probably about 10 years ago. I was influenced by, maybe I should have started with this. I had read a self-published biography of Eddie Van Halen that I, downloaded from Amazon. And the writer did a great job of, sort of going over Eddie Van Halen's life, in chronological order. But every now and then he would kind of add in one of his experiences as a fan, right? So he would, share a story about waiting for concert tickets, or, share a story about him and his brother, at the show and seeing Eddie Van Halen. And I mean, I guess I knew most of the biographical stuff already anyways. So the parts I loved most about the book was this writer sort of just sharing his experience as a fan. So I had already sort of typed out a few, stories, ideas, anecdotes. And then sort of to get back to my novel, I found that, I was trying to be pretty disciplined. I was trying to write 1,000 words every morning, which was easy because I didn't have to go anywhere. And but then I would always say, oh man, I'd rather be writing about KISS right now, or I'd rather be adding to what I have about KISS. So, I did finish the novel. It's just kind of sitting on my hard drive. But I was much more excited about the KISS project, and, just kept sort of typing away any chance that I had. And then before I knew it, I think about 70,000 words, which was, according to Google, enough for a book. So that's sort of how it came to be, I guess, Brent. I just found I really enjoyed putting down these stories.
Well, and like Brian said earlier, they're really easy to relate to, because as I'm reading this book, I'm literally saying to myself, "That's me."
Mhm.
It's like he's telling my story.
Yeah, excellent.
And as also as Brian said, it's very easy to read. It's a fast read.
Yeah.
It's hard to put down. I
Oh,
find
good.
myself kind of whizzing through it, and I'm sure I'll read it again at some point.
Thanks.
But it's very, was it structured well? This that yeah, it's a very very it's a very good book, cover to cover.
Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
for me, and this just happened. I just finished Geddy Lee's book, and I had the same feeling when I finished your book, which was a little bit of sadness because I ripped through them so fast. It was like,
Yeah,
that's over now, which is obviously a good thing. But so yeah,
that's my experience when I finally got my hands on History. I just sort of sat
Oh yeah.
down in my bedroom for like 2 days, and it's like, oh, it's done.
Yeah. So do you have a
Yeah.
pretty good collection of rock and roll bios, KISS books, etc.? And
Yeah, it's sort of a guilty pleasure, right? Just to grab a bio from a rock star and just sit down and kind of just take you away and immerse yourself into it.
yeah,
I mean, at some point, a lot of them sort of become formulaic, I think, but to hear the stories and whatnot, it's always fun. I think I'm still recovering from The Dirt by Motley Crue, and
oh,
I
Oh
probably
boy.
read that 20 years ago.
I've never read it myself, but you can see this is my collection back here. This is all my rock and roll bio stuff. I love it. Can't get enough of it. But
Yeah, I was trying to kind of look while we're talking here. It's like, I know that one. I know that one.
Well, Brian, you've oftentimes said that it's really the stories behind the people in the band, or the stories about the band, that is really fascinating.
yeah,
And here we're kind of getting the behind the scenes look at a guy who is fascinated by the band, which is pretty unique. I don't really know that there are a lot of books out there that are like this, quite honest. And I think that makes this even more of a compelling read and more interesting, because we are like, my gateway into music, aside from taking piano lessons when I was 8, was becoming a KISS fan around the same time. Like KISS was my gateway into rock music.
yeah.
And it seems like it's been kind of that way for you guys as well.
Well, Brent, I mean, because you're a few years older than me. I mean, anything you brought home, it was like boom. I can still remember we got a neighbor had a copy of Kiss Alive on vinyl, and I remember him dropping the needle on that in his parents' living room and hearing Deuce, and it was just game over.
Yeah.
And then that was right around the time Lick It Up came out, Brent, I think, and you brought home a brand new copy of Lick It Up, and you dropped the needle on that, and it's an Exciter, and it's like, oh my God, what the,
yeah.
And up to that point, our household was pretty much gospel music and like the Oak Ridge Boys and stuff. And it's like, this is it.
Yeah. This is it.
I grew up with the country in my house too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our dad sang in a gospel quartet, so it was kind of like, and not to get off topic, but before, we decided we want to do our own stuff, I think we just kind of realized piano and gospel just wasn't going to be cool enough for us. We needed to do something a little bit more exciting, and this was it. This was it.
It's just,
the big brother is the key. Oh, sorry, Brian.
Oh, no, please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, that's the one part of my book is sort of my earliest dalliance with KISS. I was really, too young to fully grasp it. I was 6 years old in 1979, but my best friend behind my house had the older brother, right? So he had all the KISS things. So yeah, we thought it was cool, right? And the next thing you know, my mom and I are at Kmart buying records.
Yeah,
I didn't have the older brother, so I had to go out and get one.
Right.
That's kind of how it was with like, so for me, and one of my earliest recollections is drawing the Alive 2 gatefold in Miss Indra's 3rd grade class, which I was 8, so it would have been like around the time they did the solo albums in Dynasty.
Yeah.
And we had some kids in school that had older brothers who were actually like into the music more than we were just into the visual. Because when you're a kid and you see this, the visual just kind of blows you away. So, 7, 8, we were more into the visual thing to the point where we would like myself and our friend Chris and Dusty at school, we would have our own band and we would talk about, okay, what outfit are we going to wear at the show tonight or whatever. Well, Dusty's going to wear the Love Gun outfit with the chains. Well, I'm going to wear the outfit with the plants on it. Well, I didn't realize they were feathers because I was Paul Stanley. I thought they were plants on his outfit from 1978. I'm wearing the plants. Oh, okay, what are you going to? So it's like, this is the stuff that we did at 8 years old, right? Sounds ridiculous, but that's how captivating it was, just based on what
Wow.
they looked like. And when we were growing up too, we had a next door neighbor, Brian. I'm sure you remember Marcy she gave us the Destroyer and Rock and Roll Over album sleeves without the albums weren't in it. So we just had the visuals, but early on the visuals were enough to kind of get us into that.
Speaking of the visuals, that's your art, correct, Ron?
Yes, that's
And
correct.
Good.
is
good.
that something you drew back when you were a kid that you just kind of kept on held on to, or is that more of a modern sketch?
You're exposing my secrets here, Brian. Yeah, I did this one, and I sort of sent it to, that's the one thing that I sort of spent money on was a cover design. And so I hired somebody through I can't remember, one of the websites, and this wasn't my original idea for the cover, but this is one of the things. And he said, oh, he loves that. I have to send him another picture. So I did the one on Alive on the back
Yeah,
there.
it's awesome. That's so cool.
But much like you, Brent, I spent hours and hours and hours drawing KISS. Like if there was one thing that was my favorite activity around sort of the junior high time was, fill up a cup with iced tea, go down to my bedroom, put on one lamp, throw a KISS record on, and then just sit at my desk and draw a KISS. And I could do that for hours and hours.
I was digging through stuff recently. I don't know if this will show up, but I found
Oh,
that I
Oh,
did. My favorite is Paul.
but that's pretty good.
I don't know that.
No, that's pretty good.
But I found that in I found a little binder that had some of the photos and stuff from the early KISS shows we went to, and that's what I wanted to ask you about, because and obviously this conversation is going to go back and forth, and it's just going to snake around the different things. But you you met Eric, Bruce, and Gene, but not Paul, correct?
Unfortunately, that is 100% correct. Yes.
And that was was that on the Crazy Nights tour, or was that like more?
That was Hot in the Shade.
Hot in the Shade. Okay.
So it was really something, I had just graduated high school. I was beginning college, and it was like the third day of college. And, I skipped the classes because we were going to go down and, try to meet KISS. So, we arrive at Pacific Coliseum, it was called in Vancouver, basically, bright and early, maybe 2 p.m. And there's a few other pockets of fans, including one of my oldest friends, a guy named Jason Pretzer and his buddies. And we just sort of started talking to whoever we could, right? Hey, do you work for KISS? And what do you do for KISS? Is KISS here? And you could tell the guy was kind of, enjoying the attention and so forth. And an hour or so later, he comes out with, some auto parts, auto supply cleaner. And he basically tells us that if we, each shine a wheel on this bus, he'll give us what he called backstage passes. So, we didn't believe him at all, but, we're not gonna test it. So we all grab a little piece of fabric that was kind of soaked in some kind of solvent. And we sit there, we, scrub a wheel, and then after about half hour, we wanted to do a good job, bring it back to him, and he goes away and he comes back with pre-show passes for us, couldn't believe it. So, we went to the show. We were told that when the opening bands end, we're supposed to go down to this certain tunnel. So we did, and showed them the pre-show passes, and they let us in, and we were just kind of put like in an assembly line, right? In sort of the empty hallway of the arena. And, there was a few contest winners beside us and so forth. And first Bruce came out, and I can't remember. I don't know if I might have brought something to have signed just in case, but I bought a Hot in the Shade poster because I wanted, the current guys to be on it, right? I didn't want, Bruce and Eric Carr signing something with Ace and Peter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And Bruce was great. How you doing? And I'm like, I love your work on Asylum. You know what I mean? Like I'm just trying to give him a compliment or something. And then we had briefly met Eric before the show because Eric showed up. The rest of them, I guess, I don't know what time they came, but Paul Stanley arrived in a truck and just kind of beeline for the Coliseum. You probably can't see that. He gave us a wave. But Eric arrived in a taxi cab about, I don't know, 5 o'clock. And rather than have the cab drop him off, sort of at the entrance, because he could have just driven right to the entrance and walked in. He had the cab drop him off in the middle of the mob, right? I say mob, 40 people. And he just got out and talked to us and signed things and high-fived us and that kind of thing, and then just walked into the arena. So, Eric came next and then Gene, right? And, my heart kind of stopped. I just remember looking at him and he was so skinny. Like, even though it was Hot in the Shade, I guess he had boots on, but I just thought, oh my God, like I didn't know he was that skinny. And he was great. He couldn't stand and talk to us for 5 minutes. He was just kind of moving down the line, but he looked at us, acknowledged us, chatted with us, signed whatever you had, right? And I just had the poster, I think. And then we're waiting because Paul was always my favorite. And okay, guys, that's it. Unfortunately, Paul can't join us tonight. I thought, what am I supposed to do with this poster now? Like
It's incomplete.
Signed it.
Right. It's incomplete.
And then, pardon me?
It's incomplete.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I used to subscribe to this KISS fanzine called Firehouse. And the guy who made it, he had the same experience the next night or the night before in Seattle. Same thing, right? All three came out except for Paul. So that's it.
That's interesting. A buddy of mine at the time when we were in junior high, I was in 7th grade and he was in 8th grade. His name was Ryan, and his older brother had access to our local newspaper press, and Ryan put together a little fanzine, like a rock and roll fanzine, and he used the local newspaper press to print it up.
Wow.
And when KISS came around in 87, December of 87 on the Crazy Nights tour, Ryan called the Glickman Marks Management company or number in New York and just said, hey, I run this magazine, can I get passes? And they said, yeah, we'll put you on the guest list. So we ended up with passes, and
oh, nice.
It was really cool. But we had 2 backstage passes, and then Ryan's brother had the photo pass because he was a photojournalist, and he got some great photos of the band, between the stage and the barrier. But he gave us his camera to take backstage, and we didn't realize, of course, these are like real high-tech cameras in 1987 with shutter speeds and all that crap, and we didn't know anything about that. So we met Eric and Paul. There's me with Paul. And there's me with Eric.
Oh, nice.
And they're very blurry because the shutter speed is just, just wrong. But the funny thing is that I don't think Ryan had very many readers, but he made up a little award thing for like drummer of the year, and Eric's holding it in that picture. And he was so gracious. He was so like, oh, that's so great. You always hear those stories about Eric Carr being so good to fans, and he absolutely was. He absolutely was. And I can still remember, in 91, when the news broke that he died, and I was just upset. I was really upset, and I was upset that Freddie Mercury got more attention.
Yeah.
Nothing against Freddie Mercury,
No.
my God, but just the balance. It was like, God, Eric Carr, But
and that was just
Paul and Gene.
That was just yesterday, right? That it was the 24th of November, 91, right?
Oh,
just yesterday.
You're right. That's the anniversary.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking Speaking of dates, I jotted this down when I read your book. You mentioned the birth of your son on March 17th, right?
Yeah.
That's Brent's birthday too.
Oh,
Yep.
happy birthday. Brent, are you 2001?
Yes. Yes. 2000, they go back 30 years before that. And
Yeah,
then,
right.
close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember, I think I quoted it in this book, Paul and Jean writing to Rolling Stone magazine and just saying, like, for you guys to have ignored Eric Carr's death is ridiculous, right? This man has
mhm.
played this many shows to this many people and, recorded on albums that sold this many copies. They said it's just totally, irresponsible and unprofessional for you to ignore this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't see that statement from them for the longest time, but when I finally read it, it just kind of brought it all back, and it's like,
Yeah.
yes, that's right. Now,
But it's personal, right? I mean, when he passed, it's like, I remember when we were growing up, like, you're really into a band, whether it's Kiss or Iron Maiden or Def Leppard or whatever. It's like, you buy the VHS videos, you go to the concerts, you listen to the records, you buy the paraphernalia, the posters, all that stuff, the T-shirts. Well, you don't really know those guys, but you feel like you do. You
Yeah.
feel like you do. And when Eric passed away, I took it personally.
Yeah.
It was like your favorite movie stars pass away, or whatever, athletes pass away. So like Brian said, it was a big hit. And I've never been a big Queen fan, no offense to those who are, and Freddie Mercury, certainly as talented as he was. But yeah, the Eric Carr thing, it really did hit home. Because for me, that was like the first time anybody that had been in a band like that I really loved had
now,
had had passed.
Ron, when you met Gene, I think you said in your book that you told him that his solo album was your favorite. Yeah. That's true, right?
Well, at the back of the book, here are my
The list.
solo album rankings. Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, Peter Criss, Ace Frehley.
But did you tell Gene that his was your favorite?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to come up with something.
You have it listed.
Very good taste.
What I think is so interesting, though, is that everybody name checks Aces as the best. Yeah. And you have it listed fourth. And this is when I read some of your opinions about some of this stuff, this is where I thought I can really relate to Ron, because as much as I love Ace's solo album, some of my favorite Kiss or Kiss related stuff is the stuff that's the least Kiss like. I love Gene's solo album. I really do. And I love all of them, but my go-to are honestly Gene's and Peter's, because they're so different. And I love Paul's too, but yeah.
Oh yeah, even today, I'll be out somewhere with a friend, and Detroit Rock City will come on, and Ron, this is Kiss, right? Are you listening? And it's like, yeah, it's Detroit Rock City, great song, but it's hard to get excited about that or Love Gun or something after hearing it for the 9,000th time. So I mean, that's what I'm listening to, right? I'm putting on the deep tracks, that type of thing,
So yeah, speaking of that, I think you did mention near the end of the book, people almost expect you to get excited about something like that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, sure.
Well, the worst experience, and I wrote about it in the book, was I was in grade 12 when Forever sort of broke as a single. And it was horrible, because I was known throughout junior high and high school as one of the Kiss guys, right? There was kind of two of us that were sort of super fans, and a lot of my friends had listened to them and all that, but a lot of my acquaintances never probably even heard a Kiss song knowingly.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when Forever came out, and everybody, now I get why you like Kiss. Like, what a great song. Like, I love Forever. And I'm just thinking, like, oh no, like, this is not why I love Kiss. Oh, I don't know. It was difficult for sure.
So how many times have you seen Kiss?
Not that often, actually. I think I've seen them maybe 14 or 15 times, something like that.
So, oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't, I missed the whole first wave, right? They came here sort of a handful of time with the original group, the last, of course, being Dynasty, right? And, I was 6 years old when they came here for Dynasty, so I was sort of too young. And my first show was Animalize. I was still, pretty young, I think 11 or 12. And then, of course, for a long time, I didn't miss a show. And, once I got my driver's license, it was easy to go to Seattle or Portland also. But I've also missed a couple that have come through the Vancouver area too. So about 14 or 15 times, which, how about you guys?
I'd have to count. I've got them all listed because this is the other weird bit of irony. When I discovered your book on Amazon, I had started putting together a memoir of going to concerts, and with the working title of I Love It Loud. So it's because I think my total number of shows of all bands is over 200.
Yeah.
KISS is I think around 30.
30.
Oh, wow.
25 to 30.
But the reason I ask was because of people's, like, if I go to my principal and if I say, like I did a couple weeks ago, I said, hey, I'm going to need to put in this date off next year, and he says, so what concert? Like, he just knows, like. And but it's not like it's, the very first show that Brent and I went to was the Asylum show, and I was so excited, so jacked up for that I came home and threw up. I was so wound up. But now you go to a show and it's like you just put your feet up and just watch it. It's not the same experience. It's different. I still enjoy it a lot, but
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, it's just a different mental space. And
yep. KISS didn't come to Vancouver for Asylum, much to my pain, but they came for Crazy Nights. And the same thing, Brian, like, I didn't sleep for a week before, and then seeing them, it was just the whole experience. It was overwhelming, for sure.
Yeah. So Brent and I, and Brent, I don't know if you've been paying attention to any news recently, but so
oh yeah, I have. I think I know where you're going with this.
Okay. Yeah. Brent and I we're supposed to go see the show in Rosemont, Illinois, Monday night. And Ron, I don't know if you've noticed this, but Paul's sick.
Yeah.
And it's like, if they have a show tonight, I can't remember where it is, but if the show tonight goes forward, then we're okay. But if they cancel tonight,
Knoxville tonight?
That was yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday,
wasn't it?
Yeah. And they ended up canceling that. So,
oh man.
But it's at the same time, it's like, well, we've seen them 30 times. It's okay.
Same thing happened to us. 20 years ago. I don't know if you've ever heard of Whistler, BC. Whistler's like a resort ski town about 2 hours outside of Vancouver. And one year Whistler decided to host a series of shows. And, KISS was supposed to come. And at the time, my oldest son, Jack, was probably about like 6, and he was obsessed with KISS. So I was going to take him. And, these are the pre-internet days, and I'm teaching, and my class is over, and I jump into the English department office to grab something. And one of my coworkers said, "Oh, Ron, your wife called. She said the kids' concert is canceled." So I said, "Oh, the kids' concert." I'm trying to think, like, did one of my other boys have a concert or a school play that night? And then right away, I'm like, "Oh, the KISS concert is canceled," right? So I said to Jack, "Bad news, buddy. The KISS concert's canceled, but do you want to go to Burger King for dinner?" And then, everything was fine.
Yeah. You just got to roll with those punches, I mean, I almost feel more bad for Paul to think, oh my God, he's got the flu, and they got only, what, 5 shows left.
I know.
And
yeah.
So and you figure they can't really risk obviously they could reschedule the Madison Square Garden shows, but those are obviously the most important ones to end it, and so I'm just earlier this morning I was wondering, gee, are they just going to play it safe and kind of not do anything until those shows just to make sure he's okay? Because look, I mean, these guys are he's in his early 70s now. It's not like it was 40 years ago. I mean, I think we all feel, I'm in my early 50s. I feel different now. It's not. So God bless him for doing, like I was telling a friend of mine, if we missed the show because for whatever reason, I got no complaints for what they've given us for 50 years. I'll take it. you know.
Mhm.
Ron, it was kind of funny though. I want to mention this. So, they do those sound check packages. And I said to Brent, I was like, let's just go ahead and do it. It's the last show we're ever gonna see. Let's just do the sound check package. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. And I thought, well, I'm just gonna wait till my next paycheck comes in and then I'll do it. And I kept checking like every few days. Oh yeah, they're still there. And the day I get paid, I go to buy the VIP upgrade thing, and it's sold out. It's like,
Oh, no way.
yeah, it's like, you know what, we've had more fun with this band. And did you ever do the KISS cruise?
No, I'd love to, but one of the difficult things
Yeah.
about being a teacher where I live is it's hard to get time off, right? Like I can ask for unpaid time off, but it costs me so much money with the pension contributions and everything. And then they can cancel it, right? If there's not enough substitute teachers, they cancel it. So
Oh, I see how that was. See,
yeah. Have you guys
yeah,
done the cruise?
yeah,
Mhm.
we've done it twice.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're in a substitute shortage ourselves right now, so my principal probably wouldn't okay it now, but we did the
Yeah.
second one and the fifth one.
Oh, no way. And was
Yeah.
it everything that I've heard?
Oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is.
It's ridiculous and it's corny, but it's just kitschy, I guess is the right word. It's just, but
Yeah.
it's so much fun.
The best story, I think, Brian, you can agree or disagree, but the best story that I think we had from the two cruises was the one time we're getting ready to get on the elevator, and the elevator door opens, and Tommy Thayer and Doc McGee, I think, are they're in the elevator, and a bodyguard or whatever, and so the door opens up, and we see them in the elevator. We're getting ready to step in, and they're getting ready to like make sure we don't get in the elevator. And Tommy's like, no, okay, it's okay, guys, come on in, get in. So we got in the elevator and just hang out with Tommy, started talking with him about guitars, strings, pickups, tuners.
Yeah.
Just just a little chat in the elevator with Tommy Thayer. Just press the button, door opens up. Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah, that and watching Paul Stanley teach an audience how to make pizza.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, somebody yelled out from the crowd. It said, use your stage voice. And he says, and then he goes, now when you're making pizza. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the cruises are a lot of fun. They
I'd
really
love
are.
to do it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I got,
did you guys get to see like a special show? Like, didn't they do like a creature set list one year?
so
Or they throw in,
Yeah, there's like a theme every year, if you
Mhm.
will. Yeah.
What, Brent, the first one was right after Monster came out, so
Mhm.
they just simply played more songs from Monster than they
Oh,
played
cool.
on the regular Monster tour, which I was thrilled with. I actually think Monster's a really good album.
Yeah.
And then the other one with Kiss Cruise 5 was the Kiss Alive. So they just they played Kiss Alive in its entirety, and the stage set looked just like Alive, and so that was kind of cool. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever they do is going to be cool. Of course, the next year was when they really hit some deep cuts, and it was like, crap.
Yeah.
But you can't nitpick this stuff, right?
No. Oh, I'm envious, guys. That sounds great.
Well,
It's
everybody's got their unique stories and stuff. I'm curious. You made a reference to Des Moines in your book, and I wondered if that was just like throwing a dart at a map or something. It was on. You said something about. I wrote it down, but I think it's on page 45.
Yeah. I think I just mentioned that, something would pale in comparison to seeing, KISS in 1948 and do you say Des Moines?
Des Moines.
Des Moines.
Des Moines. Don't get me wrong. To this day, I love both albums. Oh, because you're talking about Animalize and Destroyer, which, by the way, I love side 2 of Animalize, but few true members of the KISS Army, Poco or Des Moines, would argue that side 2 of Animalize stands up to the side 1 of Destroyer. And I read that and I thought, well, I mean, Brent and I are in Des Moines, and it's like, like your son's born on Brent's birthday. You're referencing Des Moines here, and I'm reading this and it's like, and then I get to the end where you said, you have your email address in there. I'm like, I'm emailing Ron. So
You know what, Brian? I think you just caught a mistake. I think I screwed up.
Oh, really?
Well, the KISS Army was formed in Terre Haute, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I meant to write.
Oh, so
because I sort of said that we had our Poco KISS Army, we called ourselves. So I said, true members of the KISS Army, whether you're talking about Poco or Terre Haute, is that how I say it?
Terre Haute.
Yep.
As a Canadian, obviously we know San Francisco, Los Angeles, Indiana, but names like Des Moines, Terre Haute, like we hear these names, but we don't really know where they are or how to pronounce them or anything. So I somehow, I guess I've always kind of put Des Moines and Terre Haute together. I don't know why.
Well, you know what?
We're in the Midwest. It's all in the Midwest.
Yeah, so. I mean, smack dab in the middle of Iowa. But
speaking of which, Brian, what about this? What about the KISS live bootleg from Des Moines? That's Auditorium from 77.
The KISS off the soundboard.
Yeah, so Ron, what do you think about that? That's like, as we're listening to this album, like thinking, okay, I was at my parents' house in bed asleep when this album was being recorded. So,
because Ron,
what do you think about the off the Des Moines off the soundboard recording?
Yeah, Ron, you actually write pretty extensively about having bootleg collection as well. So, what are your thoughts on the off the soundboard series and other bootlegs and stuff like that?
I mean, I guess it's kind of like we talked about with the cruises, right? Like I want to hear and see things that are, a little more obscure, right? Like the one they put out recently has Mark St. John playing guitar. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I've listened to that, 3-4 times, and just kind of trying to hear, like, what does he do different from, I guess Bruce mainly, because that's the same tour, right?
Yeah.
I can't really compare what Ace or even Vinny does too much with some of the songs, right? But so I love that, right? The sound quality is great. The one, there's a 1977 show, isn't there?
Yeah, that's the Des Moines
one. That's the Des Moines one.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, so the energy, it's I love it, right? But then at the same time, I'm thinking like, okay, well, it's kind of like Kiss Alive 2, or it's kind of like the bootlegs I have from that time. You know what I mean? So I wasn't as excited about that one, I guess. I would love to see just, more obscure shows, right? Like, and then you get that better quality, so maybe something early or like an Asylum show or something would be amazing,
I love how on the covers, how they list, the band members for that particular tour. One that I'm really hoping for, not from a set list standpoint, because it's the reunion tour, but it's Brent, you might remember the show, but it's the one show that Peter's drum tech had to sit in.
Oh yeah,
and play. I mean, I have it in a just a bootleg form.
Yeah.
So I've listened to it, but just to see like the official KISS off the soundboard and have it say like Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley, Ace Frehley, Eddie Cannon.
Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Didn't KISS perform as a trio for one show that Paul or Gene couldn't perform or something, or part of the show?
I think that has happened.
It has happened.
I just can't recall specifically what it was.
I mean, how interesting would that have been, right? Like what songs did they do, and how did they change them,
Or there's been shows where like Gene's got laryngitis and can't sing anything, so Paul sings everything, and that's the stuff I would love to see put out. I agree with you.
Where Gene has to do the lead vocal for Love Gun and can't remember any of the lyrics. Like you can't remember Domino and War Machine anyway. Why would we expect him to remember a song he did right?
Speaking of Domino, Ron,
must we?
You and I completely agree about in one level and disagree in another. I'm a fan of the absurd, so him driving around town drinking a soda or whatever it is, that's kind of funny to me, so I'll accept that. but I would rather watch that video with the mute button on, because I just can't stand that song. It's just, what made them think that that was a good idea?
I think it's just Gene sort of, I sort of have a theory that Gene doesn't mind pandering to the audience, right? Like and I think especially in the late 80s, early 90s, he thought that his audience was just sort of I don't know, like headbangers, right?
Mhm.
Like brain dead heavy metal kids who were just sort of attracted to the lowest denominator. So he went out of his way to just be as as sexist as possible, wanted Kiss to be sort of as heavy as possible. So, I guess Domino appeases that to some extent. And around here it was pretty popular. Like I think it was like Forever was really big around here, a lot of airplay. And then Domino also, right? And it was just like, oh man, are you kidding me? Like, ugh.
And I think you really hit the nail on the head. I didn't even think about it from that perspective, but him trying to cater to a certain, what his perception of the audience is. And I mean, I even I have a hard time actually listening to Christine 16 too, just because of anytime there's those references. I mean, I don't know. It just
It's
gives me the
a little
creeps.
cringeworthy as we get older.
It gives me the creeps.
And when you're 18, it doesn't really bother you. But now, okay, there's a guy who's 70 years old.
Yeah.
Well, walked out of school that day. It's kind of like, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Well, I remember thinking, we talked about what a great guy Eric Carr was before, but I remember first reading and seeing that he was together with Carrie Stevens. And I remember thinking to myself, like, isn't he a lot older than she is?
And what would have been the age difference between them? I mean,
it was big,
yeah. It's I just kind of figure when you put something out to the public, you might want to just, I don't know, be a little bit above board rather than below. But
isn't it something like, as a kid, I didn't think anything about Christine 16, right?
No.
The bridge comes on when I saw you coming out of school that day.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, cool. But now you think like, yeah, you could never in a million years release that, right?
No. And that's the difference, of course, in life perspective. And when you are 16 years old, that's your tunnel vision about what life is. And the whole Revenge album, to me, I know that a lot of fans just put that right up there, but and sonically it's really, really impressive, but I just don't think it's aged well at all, to me.
Yeah.
I agree.
So although
one thing I do is, every so often I'll grab a studio album. I haven't listened to this in a long time. And I mean, you got, your Thou Shalt Not, and another one I'm not a fan of is that God Gave Rock and Roll to You Too, right?
Mhm.
They put at the end of that. I Just Wanna, right? Is Every Time I Look at You on that album?
Yeah.
But it's heavy, right? That's what everybody says. Like, oh, it's Creatures and Revenge because they're heavy,
Animalize is heavy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Look It Up is heavy.
Look It Up is heavy. But yeah, there's something about Revenge that just, it seems a little more I mean, I think Lick It Up and Animalize are contrived in their own way, but by the time you get to Revenge, and Paul's wearing those shirts and the pants with the F word all over, it's like, I'm not really buying that that's really Paul Stanley.
Yeah.
It's like, what was a surprise to me is when I first heard the off the soundboard there with Mark St. John, and Paul steps up on the stage and he's like, how the F are you? Like he's saying the F word. And I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that he all of a sudden started swearing in the late 80s.
Well, and Brent, didn't you read somewhere that Paul never actually felt comfortable doing that he was kind of
right.
Oh,
yeah, I used to have a cassette bootleg of show on the Unmasked tour, and he cussed on that show too. And I remember reading or hearing that it was kind of told that they needed to do that. That was kind of like, what you do, and that he never really felt comfortable doing it. I mean, I don't really understand it itself, but it was certainly hearing it for the first time. It was kind of a shock. So I'm like, what? That's not really how they are on stage. You know, we've been watching these bootlegs for years. That's not really how they do things. But for a while, they did.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard one of the early 80s bootlegs? I don't know if it's Creatures or probably Lick It Up, where he tells a story about he was at the doctor's office and a woman came up and said, "Where's Gene Simmons? I want him to meet his son." Have you heard that
Oh,
story?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, at the end, he says, "I lied. That baby had the biggest tongue I've ever seen." It's like, so you're celebrating like an absentee father or something.
Right. Yeah. And you just get this sense that in the 80s they were really trying hard to be edgy or to fit, but that said, I still love some of the music that comes from the 80s. I think there's stuff on every one of those albums that I still love to this day.
Yeah.
Some of it can be, a little cringy, but and I like kind of the novelty things as well. It never bothered me that Eric sang Beth, although I think that it bothered Eric that he was asked to sing Beth on Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits. But I love, my favorite line in the book is when you, on page 171, you're talking about that, and you said something to the effect of that Peter Criss doesn't exactly reek of class. And that just kind of cracked me up because I've always got the same impression. What are your thoughts on Peter as an artist? Did you follow Peter Criss's solo career after he left KISS as well, with Let Me Rock You and Out of Control? And
when I was fairly young, I somehow got a copy of Out of Control, and I listened to it, and it was sort of catchy when I was younger, but I mean, I was 2 feet into Judas Priest and Iron Maiden and all that. So over the years, Out of Control has grown on me, right? And I really enjoy listening to it now. I didn't discover Let Me Rock You until about 10 years ago, and I really like that album. That's sort of one of my go-tos that I'll put on, just as my musical taste has kind of changed over the years. And then I think he has more on iTunes right now that I've listened to some of his later stuff, but just kind of hasn't made much of an impression on me,
Yeah. We were driving to a show with a buddy of ours, Josh, who's the guy who writes all the stories.
Yeah.
And we were on our way to Wisconsin to a show, and he'd never heard Peter's album Cat Number One. And we made him listen to it, and I think he was about ready to jump out of the car at one point because he's like, "This is just bad." Yeah. But Peter, I have a hard time with Peter because I look at him and I think, well, and to a large degree Ace as well. I mean, I know what they say, like KISS would never have been KISS without Ace and Peter. But I just don't know how you can ignore the dysfunction that they ultimately fell into. And I've never blamed Paul or Gene for trying to continue their careers. But it seems like a lot of folks, and again, no disrespect to Ace and Peter, but I just don't understand the whole, like, they should have hung it up years ago because it's not the original band. And well, I mean, it wasn't the original band when Vinnie Vincent joined or when Eric Carr joined, or
my son and I one of my sons and I had a discussion the other night and about why they quit after the reunion tour or whatever happened. And he said, "Dad, it's an insult to them. They're founding members. Now they're paid employees, and Ace is earning more than Peter." And that's kind of what I said was they jumped ship, right? Paul and Gene, sort of kept it going, right? They stayed true to it and so forth. So, now Ace and Peter have to accept their roles, so to speak.
And it's just kind of mind numbing to me and be thinking, well, okay, how much am I getting paid per night to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and I'm going to complain.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I'm not seeing it from their perspective, and I want to be respectful of their perspective, but it's hard for me to understand. It's hard for me to grasp that, but yeah. So did you Oh yeah, you'd said that your parents, your folks were really pretty supportive of KISS fandom in the early days, correct?
Yeah. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she was 100% supportive of like everything, right? Like she'd bring me home the circus, the hit parader, the cassettes, all that kind of stuff. And in the early days, my grandmother, my mom would be out looking for Kiss cards, and 16 magazine that had one picture of Kiss in the back cover or something like that. And yeah, it's my grandma who, one of the things I write about, I think it's like my first Kiss experience. I lost all of my Kiss cards, sort of playing a card game with some
Oh
of the
yeah,
older
you wrote
guys.
about
And
that. Yeah.
I
Oh
came
man,
home, my parents let me suffer about a week, and then I came home, and on my bed there was a box of Kiss cards to sort of replenish my collection. But and my dad was super supportive too, but my dad was a long haul truck driver. He wasn't home as much, right? So he wasn't really well, and he's not interested in heavy metal and rock anyway, so he wasn't really dialed in. But I remember one night, my dad was due to come home from a trip. He'd probably been gone like maybe a week or something like that, was sort of the longest that he would go for. And I was just kind of in bed, I was probably grade 8 or something. I'm just kind of in bed getting ready, and I hear my dad come in the door. So I knew that he would, come say hi to me and good night. We chat for a minute. And he just walked in and he sort of threw something on my bed. And I just kind of looked up, and it was just a Kiss magazine. You remember that, Metal Edge or whatever would
Hmm.
just put out a random
Yep.
Kiss special, and
Yeah,
mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it. And I just kind of thought like, geez, here's my dad. He's a meat and potatoes guy. He's out working his butt off, driving a truck. He's never been into music or anything, right? And here he is like making it a priority to, find and buy. And that's the other thing about my dad. Like he never wasted a dollar. So for him, putting down probably $4 for a Kiss magazine probably killed him. But here he is, like he's vested in what I'm interested in, and he, finds it and brings it home, right? So, there's a few instances like that, probably same for you guys, where, something Kiss just kind of symbolizes more, right?
Yeah,
Friendship, family, that type of thing.
definitely. In a different way. You also wrote about like songs like I and My Way, and this
Yeah.
kind of attitude of, you know what, I can persevere. I can make something of myself. I and not that I have to necessarily completely shun society's norms, but I can find my own path. There's a kind of an empowerment in a lot of
Mm.
KISS stuff. And from a family perspective, it was a little bit of a mixed signal, because like Brent said earlier, our dad sang in a gospel quartet, and our parents met at church. So our parents had a really difficult time with the KISS thing.
Yeah.
I remember at one Christmas at our with extended family, one of our family members said to my dad, "Well, KISS stands for Knights in Satan's Service," and Dad said, "Well, I believe it." And I'm thinking, why? Because they want to rock and roll all night and party every day? I mean, what does that have to do with the devil? Nothing. But then he turns around and he buys us tickets to see KISS in Des Moines, March 16th, the day before Brent's birthday. Before which, how old would you have been? Before
I would have
your
been 15,
So before your
1986.
15th birthday, I was in fifth grade, and he buys us tickets to see KISS on the Asylum tour, and he drops us off at the arena, tells us where he's going to pick us up after the show. And we step out, and there's all these protesters out there with these flyers saying how satanic KISS is and stuff. And so from our parents, we got a big mixed message. Is this okay? Is this not okay? But the through line was KISS themselves,
Yeah.
because even though they have some cringy moments, and there's despite that, what I end up taking out of it were things like I and My Way, and that kind of more positive element, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So,
don't, yeah, exactly. It's never been that like, I've been down or something, so I've sat down and put on I and all of a sudden pumped myself up and went out and did something. But I think it's just, the hours and hours and hours of listening to their music, hearing their interviews where Paul and Gene are often sort of espousing the same message, it just rubs off on you, right? It just
Yeah.
influences you, I think, anyways.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say or ask you that question. That was a question I was going to ask you. Because it's obviously they've shaped who you are as a person to some degree. You wrote a book about your experience with KISS, and it's great. So, and KISS are not known as being people that write grandiose lyrics or thought-provoking lyrics, right? It's not like you're going to listen to, Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden or something by Yes, and really thought-provoking. But you did find some moments that kind of resonated with you and probably still do today. And so I was going to, it's kind of not really a surprise that they have shaped who you are, right? I mean, in what ways would you say that they have kind of helped you become the person that you are today, the person that wrote this book?
Well, I've always kind of went with the message of, Gene Simmons, right? And, I don't know that we can ever know the whole story, right? Gene's he's into showmanship and selling and all that, but, he's this immigrant kid, right? Comes to New York with nothing, right? It's him and his mother. And he decides, I'm going to be a rock and roll star, and he kind of takes a different path, right? He's into the comics and the fanzines. He becomes a teacher, but he works hard at it. And, lo and behold, he's one of the biggest rock stars in the world. Uh, so I think that at times I have thought of that too. Like I wasn't necessarily academically gifted, son of a truck driver. I didn't know if I'd be able to actually earn a university degree and become a teacher. But, at times I did sort of think, well, think about Gene and what he can do. And, maybe I could do that too, right? That was one of them. And then this isn't really something I've necessarily learned from KISS themselves, but there was a time, probably late 80s, early 90s, that I think I knew everything there was to know about KISS. Like I certainly cannot say that today. Like I haven't totally kept up on, all the books, the latest releases, the message boards, everything. But there was a time where I think I knew everything that was sort of available publicly. I read everything I could, and I would kind of think like, okay, if I can learn this much about KISS, and if I can remember this much about KISS, then shouldn't I be able to study for a university course and learn that too? I don't
No,
know,
that's
that's really how life works, but that's what was in my head anyways.
That is incredible
good.
because that is actually very similar to me. I was actually
Yeah.
rejected from university right out of high school. I didn't have the grades for it. I had to go to community
Me
college
too.
first. Exactly. And you know, you mentioned Gene's story, and I know not everybody can do what he did, and but there is a power in that story. Have you ever watched the interview he did? I can't remember who it was with, but he talks about being in Haifa, Israel, and getting the care packages with the peaches, and they didn't have the thing to open up the cans with, and so they found something to get and he drank the juice.
Oh,
Have you ever seen that interview?
I don't think, no, I don't think I have.
He gets choked up. He starts to tear up talking about that, and then at least for me, that's when I really understood why America means so much to him. And
Yeah.
just and he really does believe that you can do anything that you set your mind to because he did it. Now, I mean, obviously not everybody can do that, but there's a fire there though, that that, like you say, it's like if I can learn all this stuff about a band, why can't I learn what I need to learn for a class and pass a class and go into the. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Well, and the other one that really hits me is I don't know exactly how old Tommy Thayer is. Is he 60 now or?
He just turned 60.
Did he?
Okay.
No,
So, like I'm 51, and, I remember when Tommy Thayer joined KISS, I remember thinking to myself, like, holy Christ, you mean I could have joined KISS? Like we're not that far removed. Like if I just would have worked super hard to be a heavy metal guitarist and I just that could I have actually, because Tommy talks about being a KISS fan when he's a kid, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and Eric
Eric
too.
was too. Eric too. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's pretty amazing. Hey, I mean, I made this long list of stuff, but there's one that I just gotta get in here before,
Sure.
It's KISS meets the Phantom of the Park, and he's looking for someone, but it's not KISS. And just that whole that whole thing about like taking just this kind of almost random quote from this goofy movie, and you and your friends you turned it into this like part of your vocabulary, and that is so something that we can relate to. And I love that movie. I will say the European cut is there's something about it I don't like as much as the original North American cut. But can you just, you and Brent, just kind of, because Brent, that movie inside and out too,
Oh yeah, we'll walk up to each other and our friend Josh and say, we'll do that. We'll just pull stuff out of somewhere, and the other guy knows immediately what we're talking about. But the random person on the street overhearing will be like, "What? That isn't right." If you're looking for someone, and then you could say, "But it's not KISS." Exactly. Brian would know exactly how to complete that, and you would too.
Oh,
it's weird. It's weird, but we do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's Peter's line? Gene's brother was an only child.
It was an only child.
Yeah. Easy, cat man. And they have guns. Or who ripped off our talisman? Not quite ordinary.
It might have been a podcast called History Science Theater. I can't remember. They put together an interview with Abner Devereaux.
Oh man.
They asked these fictional questions, and then they played a soundbite from, and it was just hilarious. Like they said.
So you're saying it was a fictional interview, and they used quotes from the movie?
Exactly. But it had me dying. Like they said, "Hey Abner, thanks for joining us, Mr. Devereaux. What do you think about Peter Criss's recent solo releases?" And Abner says, "Well, beginning to concern me a little."
So they used the actual audio from the movie.
Oh yeah.
I gotta find that.
Like this one, Brian. Your ride is about over. KISS.
Yep.
Just a little.
Oh man, and Brent, I will never forgive you for this. This was probably early 80s at some point. I was falling asleep on the couch, and I'm like, I gotta go to bed or whatever. And I wake up, and and suddenly Kiss Meets the Phantom just comes on, like it was, syndicated rebroadcast or something.
Yeah.
And he knew it was coming. He stayed up for it, and he didn't tell me. But fortunately I woke up just in time, and instead of going to bed, I was up and alert and watching that thing. And we've watched it with some friends. My wife's watched it. She thinks it's hilarious. I just how can anybody not like that movie? I mean, that's just classic.
It's a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Right. For sure. Yeah, our experience was similar. I was what was I, 5 when it aired originally, so I didn't even know of it. And but in the mid 80s, it was every week the TV guide came, and I just went through all the late night, like when is it going to finally, and then all of a sudden one day, or one week, I looked and it's like, oh my God, Kiss Meets the Phantom is airing. Like it was just, couldn't believe it.
Right? Perseverance pays off.
Yeah.
Well, in those days, and I said this in my book too, like any little snippet of Kiss, like, if there was a picture this big of Kiss in makeup in a magazine, I'm buying it. I don't care what the magazine is, right? There was just no Kiss, especially makeup, available, anywhere, right? Or in Vancouver anyways,
Yeah. Well, this has been cool. I'm looking at my checklist of all this stuff. It's going on, well, 10:42 our time. And I don't know, Brent, do you any other must ask questions, or
I have a list, and we could probably spend another 2 or 3 hours with.
I know. I'm just looking at
stuff. Oh my gosh. Fair. Maybe we can do this another time and dig into some other stuff.
Well, yeah, I
got a list, and there's a lot of things that you can pick up in the book. Read the book. If you have questions for Ron, read the book. There's a lot of information and answers in the book, and maybe we can put some links as to where you can get the book in the comment section.
Yeah, well,
because it's a really good read. It's if you're a KISS fan, it's a book you almost have to just have, right? It's just, as a KISS fan, I love the book.
One of my favorite things on page 212.
And thank you very much. Thank you for doing it.
One of my favorite things on page 212 is when you come up with this hypothetical set list. for
Oh, we've done that. We've done that too.
yeah, but and this is just, stuff from, Unmasked,
Yeah.
uh Dynasty Unmasked, The Elder.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, well, if they did an Elder tour, what would it be like?
Yeah.
I've often thought
Yeah,
the same thing, like what would a Carnival of
this is
Souls tour?
following the pattern of, what is it, 3 studio albums and then a live album, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like if they were going to play this set list, I mean, there'd be no amount of money that would keep me away from seeing this live, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And God bless you, you put in Charisma and Only You, which is my favorite song off The Elder. Only You.
Oh,
Yeah.
that reminds me. So Charisma had its start as I think is it Simple Type on the Wicked
Mhm.
Lester.
Mhm.
It's the same.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Same intro.
yeah,
Yeah.
are you as familiar with the Wicked Lester album as you are
I
with?
haven't listened to it a long time, but I've listened
Okay.
to it many times. Yeah, we want to shout it out loud.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
original versions of like She and Love Her All I Can and
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sweet Ophelia never made it, I don't think.
uh no, they never revisited that one, but I love the Wicked Lester album. And I just think it's kind of interesting looking back just on this last hour and 15 minutes. We've actually spent less time talking about their actual music and the songs.
Yeah.
We're talking kind of more on the impact of the band on us. So
I think that says something. I think that's kind of the point of the book. It's because we start off talking about what they look like
mhm.
and that they're this larger than life personas and personalities like superheroes or comic book characters, but it's true, especially when we were kids.
Yeah.
That was captivating. And here now, we are in your case, 40 some years later, and you've written this great book about it. So it's not always about the music. The music is great, and without the music, there wouldn't be KISS, obviously, but it's more than that. And
Yeah.
I think the book really sums that up nicely.
Well, if I was forced to pick favorite KISS albums, it would Unmasked is the one I go to almost more than any.
Okay,
It
that's
just
one of my
is.
top three. Top three.
Is
Yeah.
that what I put for my favorite
I
album?
think it
Unmasked.
Creatures would be mine. Creatures would be my favorite. Unmasked is top three for sure.
I
Um,
love Creatures also,
And
definitely.
then Alive, the first live album. I'll say it's the greatest live album that's ever been
Oh yeah.
recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't
My
agree
favorites
more.
really that transition from The Elder or Unmasked to The Elder to Creatures, that from 1980 to 82 to do such a diverse range of music. I just find that just I just always just fascinating. I think those three albums are that some people would look at it and go, oh, but what about like Love Gun? And it's like, I mean, I like Love Gun, don't get me wrong, but personally, I just think that Easy as It Seems or even She's So European is a little ridiculous, but I'd rather listen to those than like Got Love for Sale. I just think they're better songs. I think the song crafting is better. But yeah. But
I agree.
we could keep going on and on and on. But why don't we just kind of we've kind of focused the theme here has kind of been on KISS as a concept, as a band that's influenced not so much the album specifically, but thank you so much for your willingness to check in with us and discuss this. I've read it once, took notes. I'll be reading it again at some point. So
Super.
thank you much. Brent, any last thoughts?
No, it's a great book. We appreciate your time, Ron, and I'm certainly going to read it again, like Brian will, and I'll probably be recommending it to some other people. I'm sure we'll put some links in there so people can access it, buy it, and read it. If you're a KISS fan or not, it's a compelling story, really.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off here.
Thanks, guys. If I could just add to,
Yeah.
really, it's an honor to be on your show. Thank you very much. And, certainly I love what you guys are doing. I've already shared the website with one of my friends. You've got this whole sort of, universe going, right, with the music and the YouTube show, the art and the books. Is it a comic book or is it a?
No, that might be cost prohibitive for us. But the short version, it kind of came out because we kind of resumed writing music together, and we couldn't find a singer. Like, well, let's just do instrumental stuff, and just doing it for the fun of it. And then Josh started to come up with some crazy fictitious backstory, and he's always liked to write. So and it just kind of evolved that way. And now what we do is when we write something, we try to make whatever we write reflective of the fictional characters or the fictional themes that
I love it.
The story.
It's great.
So, yeah, we appreciate the feedback.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, definitely. I was surprised when you made a reference to Linus Velour. It took me a second to catch that. I'm like, whoa, dang.
Well, like you say, I listened to the first, maybe there's 6 installments in the first podcast series.
So
but then it ends.
it did. It just kind of ended. But because we kind of came out of COVID, but yeah, Josh has let's see, I'll grab him here. He did
wow.
Yeah. So there's book number 1. It's called Origins of the Damned, and it's made to look like a comic, and there's some character art in there.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of when I think of them as not quite us, because they're not. It's like maybe 1% true and 99% hogwash.
That's what you said on one of the podcasts.
Yeah. And then Fellowship of the Damned, which is they get together as adults and try to be a band, and then Conquest of the Damned. And the whole theme is being damned to obscurity. It's like but the other things we kept, like we had this drummer. Well, we had several drummers when we were younger, and then we had a couple different drummers as adults. We just can't get a drummer to stick around. So the 4th was called Travelers in Time, and it's kind of a time travel story about the band trying to find a drummer. They go back in time, and that's
one of your albums, isn't it? Is that one of your albums?
It's
prologue, the epilogue.
And KISS makes an appearance in that book.
KISS does appear in this book.
KISS appears in that book. So
See, and this was just this was the first album we did. It was basically just born out of us jamming ideas, and the title, the name Underlords of the Overworld, just a fancy way of like a bunch of nobodies. And then the other thing during COVID is we ended up doing this. We called it Underlords of the Overworld and Friends. Hell Comes a Small Package is songs from the Underlords universe, because in these stories, Josh would come up with these other artists, like Scurvy and Ricketts is a folk duo, and this kind of Christian rock band and stuff. And we started recording songs for these fictitious bands, and
I love it.
I just had a ball doing it. In fact, I actually had one of my former students did one of the vocals on the Scurvy and Ricketts song.
Cool.
Which that was fun. And then it's an instrumental album, but it's the 4 main tracks are kind of based on kind of the musical themes that we would think of as they relate.
And the cover kind of is modeled after Destroyer.
Exactly.
I think this is the one I listened to the other day there.
It's kind of the Destroyer.
And you got the colors there, obviously.
Green, the red, the purple.
In Time. That's what I was listening to. The other day there.
I'm just honored that you would check it out. I think that's great.
For sure. I really enjoyed it.
Josh also extended the universe with a kind of a quirky occult group. That's called the OAO, which stands for Ordo Abstrusus Oculus. And they're kind of a quirky group that's subtracted by the U.S. government to provide cover and deception stories for anomalous happenings. And we recently just did a song. Brent and Josh wrote it back in 95, but we reworked it and we rewrote it and re-recorded it. And we had Blaze Bailey from Iron Maiden, who had been
you mentioned that. Wow, how did that happen?
I just emailed his manager.
No way.
Yeah. He just said, here's the process and here's how much it would cost. And then so I said to Brent, I said, you want to do this? And he said, how can we not? So,
Right.
so we
Like
did.
a cameo type thing or something.
Yeah.
It-
You gave him the lyrics, obviously,
yeah,
and the backing
Yeah.
track.
yeah.
Yep, lyrics and melody, but he added some stuff of his own, which was really cool. We gave him,
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of his own personal thumbprints on that. And
Yeah.
Oh, man, that's pretty cool.
And Josh
Yeah.
he's written a part 5. And all, even though they're fictional stories, they all kind of reflect a reality of trying to live a creative life while you're still trying to balance things like work and just the struggle of trying to do that thing, and when no one knows who you are and you're not getting paid for it, it costs you money to do it. And so it's like a gigantic metaphor, basically. And we'll probably find a way to weave Blaze Bayley into that 5th unpublished story, because he is on that. But yeah, I mean, it was very cool, especially since he was in Iron Maiden back when Brent and Josh wrote the original version of that song. So to hear him singing different lyric, but to hear him singing the same melody and go, oh my God, I was listening to the X Factor. Yeah. Brent wrote,
it's pretty
I can't
cool.
imagine. Yeah, that would be something for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get it out there so people can hear it. Hopefully it won't be, too much longer.
Yeah. We do tend to work at a snail's pace, but
well, I'm going to keep checking out your website and everything, and listening to the music and whatnot for sure.
Well,
the YouTube page.
Yeah. I mean, keep in touch. As diehard KISS fans, this is probably not the only time we'll reach out to you. Maybe we'll have an idea for something down the road. So
I think
that'd be great, Brian and Brent. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed our time here.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ron. We appreciate it.
All right. Until next time.
All right. Until next time.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.